going to help you get those lineups set at the wide receiver position. Let's go through the list and see who you want to start and who you don't. All right, let's kick it off with the top tier. These are the elite receivers for fantasy. Talk about CeeDee Lamb. Look, it wasn't his best game on Sunday night. You're still keeping him in your lineup. No reason to worry there. Amon-Ra St. Brown coming off a bye. Still a stud. You're still starting him. Jamar Chase, need I say more? You should never sit him. Now, A.J. Brown also not only coming off a bye, but also coming off an injury. We haven't seen him since the opener, but I still feel like if he's in your squad, you got to start him. And then there's a pair of stud receivers you really hope you can put out there for week 6. Nico Collins now dealing with a hammy week to week. You might have to prepare for life without Nico, just saying. And then Malik Neighbors, you'd think he would be back after missing a week with concussion, so keep those fingers crossed. But let's talk now about DK Metcalf. Is he still a must start after a down week? I mean, not just him, but that whole Seahawks offense.
He's still a must start for me. I mean, okay, week 1 against Sertan, a down week, and then here, a down week. But he did get shadowed by that Giants corner who's actually been playing pretty well this year. So, like DK Metcalf, he has a kind of upside you don't want to bench in fantasy. If I've got DK Metcalf, he's one of these guys, I'm just setting him and forgetting him in my lineup.
Yeah, I know it's hard for some people to kind of put him in the same categories like CeeDee Lamb or let's say Amon-Ra St. Brown. But every player, no matter how good they are, will have down weeks. And it's not like he was completely shut out. So, yeah, I think the way he's playing in this offense this season, just, forget about last week. He's still a guy you want in the lineup. Too much upside. And now I think it's high time Drake London is finally where he belonged. Look, a lot of people were drafting him at the very beginning of the second round, sometimes even the first round. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised that he's now finally a must start.
Yeah, finally a must start. The wide receiver 3 in PPR leagues since week 2 after that terrible week 1. I mean, this offense is looking better. Kirk Cousins is looking better. You got to think Drake London from now to the rest of the season probably going to be a must start.
Yeah, and this week, I mean, is it possible he does better than last week? It might be. He gets the Carolina Panthers. All right, then we'll go just another tier down here. Not absolute must starts depending on your league, but for the most part, if you have these players, you shouldn't worry. Really good players, really good matchups. Let's start with DJ Moore. Went off last week, 105 yards, 2 scores, and somehow gets an even better matchup this week. And then if you have any of the top 2 Tampa receivers, you're good to go. It almost doesn't really matter. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, not scared of that Saints defense, at least not enough to sit either of them. So you're good with Evans and Godwin. Zay Flowers came through last week if you trusted him, and now he gets the Commanders. Don't need to say more about that. Jaden Reed, okay, he didn't have a big game last week, but come on. Are you really singing Jaden Reed? You shouldn't. Now, despite a down game, admittedly a very down game in week 5, Chris Olave usually has that upside that he's a strong start, but a possible Derek Carr injury could complicate things. Now, I feel like if Carr is good to go, no issues, you still probably want to start Olave, but what if he isn't?
Yeah, if Carr is starting, if he's good to go, I still feel like you got to put Olave in your lineup. This is such a good matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We just saw the entire Falcons, even Kyle Pitts had a good game here, but if it's, not Derek Carr, like is it going to be Spencer Rattler? Is it going to be Jake Haener? Is that how you pronounce his name? I don't know. I probably have to move Olave down maybe all the way to the flex tier.
Man, if it's one of those quarterbacks, I'm probably just sitting Olave and taking my chances with another player because I don't want to risk the 0 because Olave really depends on those deep plays, those deep balls. Yeah, I don't know if I'm feeling it from Rattler or Haener. So again, if Carr is good to go, then you do mostly start Olave. If not, I'm out. You're definitely feeling good if you started T. Higgins last week. Okay, fine. I'm done doubting him. I get it. He's healthy. He's motivated. If you have T. Higgins, probably no questions here.
Yeah, no questions. I mean, it's the Giants who, again, are better than I thought they would be on defense, but Burrow's rolling. This offense is rolling. Get T. Higgins in your lineup.
Now with Devontae Smith, sure, coming off a bye, but also that concussion the week before, are you just automatically putting him in lineups?
I am. I mean, again, I always say this and I always feel bad saying it, but it's a concussion. It's not going to affect his performance like an ankle, a knee, a hammy, something like that. This Brown secondary doesn't scare me at all. Devonta Smith was playing great before that concussion. Get him in your lineup.
Right. We shouldn't move off of our opinion of him before the season started, which is he is one of the most high upside wide receiver twos out there. Yeah, if I have Devontae Smith, I have zero reservations about starting him. Now, last week I felt Garrett Wilson could smash even against this Vikings defense. Guess what? He even smashed my expectations. But this is a totally different situation this week. So, how good do you feel about him against Buffalo?
Not nearly as good this week. The Bills, one of the best secondaries, one of the best against wide receivers, but still it's Garrett Wilson. I mean, what did he have, like 20, 21 targets last week? Yeah, I know it probably won't be as good as it was last week, but it's still going to be too good to bench.
Exactly. I mean, the difference is here when he went against Denver, that was a one-on-one matchup. Pat Surtain is basically showing that he's like the best cover corner in the league. This is a good defense, but I don't feel like Garrett Wilson will be completely taken out of the game. Still too much upside to bench. And if you kept the faith in Terry McLaurin, you're finally being rewarded. Feel like he's going to live at least in this tier, at least as long as Jaden Daniels keeps doing his thing.
Exactly. And this week, it's a great matchup against the Ravens, who we talk about it. They're like a pass funnel defense. They're weak against the pass, weak against wide receivers, strong against the run. This could be a big Terry McLaurin week. Make sure he's in your lineup.
Yeah, don't be surprised if McLaurin has his best week so far of the season. At the bare minimum, he's going to smash his current line on underdog for pick'ems. Right now, 57.5 yards against this Ravens defense. Absolutely, I'm going to take that. By the way, if you haven't signed up for underdog yet, you should know that you also get a free pick'em this week. Brock Purdy, zero point 0.5 total yards for that Thursday night game. You combine that with this Terry McLaurin pick, I feel like you have a pretty good chance to win your very first pick'em. Just make sure if you do sign up for Underdog for the very first time, use code ENDGAME because it gets you that free pick plus all the other promotions they have going, like, oh, let's say up to $1,000 in bonus cash for your first deposit. All right, let's move on to the third tier. We call these guys solid starts. They should have a high enough floor with some upside as well, just maybe not quite as much as the guys we've already talked about. So, Brian Thomas, yeah, I admit it. I've been too low on him so far. It looks like he's not only a solid fancy option, but I think he's already the number one receiver in Jacksonville. I know you agree on that. Stephon Diggs, well, he might be the number one receiver in Houston now if Nico Collins is out, which is very possible here. So, got to feel good about him if you drafted him. And yet, Darnell Mooney, okay, fine. We get it. You're going to be good every week from now on. Kirk Cousins is back. Let's just call you a solid start at this point. Now, Deontay Johnson, of course, solid start. In fact, should be better. And then, of course, last week, only 3 catches for 23 yards. Is the Dalton magic gone?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but look, that was the Bears. That was Jalen Johnson. We figured he'd get enough targets here to overcome it, but it didn't happen. This is the Falcons. I mean, yeah, A.J. Terrell, but not quite the same level. I think Deontay Johnson, one of these guys, it's hard for me to bench him.
Well, look, we're not going to see that first game, Andy Dalton, 300 and whatever, 60 something yards. No, we're not going to see that every week. I don't think we're also going to see last week's version of Dalton, somewhere in between. Good enough for Deontay Johnson, still a target hog for the most part. Yeah, I think he is still solid based on volume. And look, Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, sure, I feel like we need to keep him at least here, but I know some people are going to have their doubts. Another dud.
I'm starting to have my doubts a little bit too. I mean, like, it's just, where's the upside here? But it's a good matchup against Green Bay. We'll see if Jair Alexander actually plays this week, but Green Bay's not been a strong secondary this week. I still feel like Marvin Harrison, the upside is there somewhere, and so I got to keep him in my lineup.
Well, here's the thing. Almost all of his production really came in that one game, but he doesn't have a bad matchup here. The Packers. The Packers' pass defense hasn't been that good either. Look, there's still not that many receivers I would play over Harrison, so let's just keep him in here and see what he does. And then what's supposed to be just one of the best for fantasy offenses, the 49ers, has become really one of the most frustrating. We got two extremes here. Brandon Ayuk, who everyone's down on, went off for his first big game of the season. Meanwhile, Deebo Samuel did almost nothing. What do we do with these guys?
These are the guys, like, I just never want to bench these guys because that was, as we've seen, like, 1 week it could be Brandon Ayuk, the next week it could be Deebo. There's going to be weeks where it's both of them. You don't want these guys on your bench. I know it's frustrating, but you pretty much have to start them.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is, people see them together here in the same tier. You're like, well, how can you say that? Look, 2 weeks ago, you weren't wanting Ayuk in your lineup and you had to play Debo and then it switches. I mean, honestly, you just never know, but they both have massive upside. So, yeah, I mean, if you got them, you still mostly play them. We still have a lot of wide receivers to break down for week 6. If you feel like we're helping you out, you're getting value from this video, just take a second, click like, and subscribe. We appreciate it. In a perfect world, these receivers are all flex options, with buys and injuries and just maybe straight up struggles from receivers. Maybe these are in your starting lineup. Whatever the case, these are receivers you can definitely consider for week 6. So start with the Seahawks. I mean, we feel great about DK Metcalf still, despite a down game. Can you feel great about JSN or Tyler Lockett?
I mean, I feel the same way I always feel about Tyler Lockett. Like, you need some points, he'll get it for you. JSN's been very frustrating for me. I expected more from JSN this year. But that being said, he hasn't been terrible. He's also still getting you points. So right now, I kind of feel the same about him. Like, you need some points, they'll do it for you.
I'm very disappointed with JSN. I expected a lot more. And the thing is, he bailed you out if you start him with that touchdown. That was late. That wasn't a come from behind effort. The receiving yardage was definitely not there. But here's what worries me is his separation has not been there. He's just not been very effective at getting open this season. So he's still streamable if you need him, but man, I'm definitely down on him. Lockett, like you said, he's just kind of a floor play if you need points. All right, so while Brian Thomas has been elevated to a strong start, Christian Kirk is just a flex. That sound about right?
Yeah, sounds about right. Plus, this is a tough matchup against the Bears. I mean, we debated Brian Thomas in that tier because of the matchup. So, yeah, I can't put Christian Kirk any higher than this in this matchup.
Agree. Always has upside, always has downside. That's kind of the definition of a flex play, right? You don't know what you're getting, take a shot here. But yeah, not a great matchup this week. Now, it's really interesting. The Bears put up some points. Caleb Williams had another big game yardage wise, but neither Romo Dunze or Keenan Allen really helped you out. It was like it was all DJ Moore. So, do you feel any better or worse about either Allen or Dunze in week 6?
You got to feel better. It's the Jaguars. This is one of those defenses you want to stream against. I'll say here, if I prefer one, it's going to be Odunze because, yeah, they each had 6 targets last week, but Keenan Allen, 6.3 yards per reception. Romo Odunze, 9. He's got the bigger play upside. So between them, I'm taking Odunze, but they're both in good spots this week.
Exactly. I mean, look, DJ Moore's clearly the number one receiver there. I don't want to get carried away, but I'm at least encouraged by Odunze. I think he is and probably is going to be the number 2 target there, not Allen. I'll dig into him a little bit later. This matchup could pay off if you need a high upside flex with some risk. On Monday Night Football, Rashid Shaheed was the leading receiver for the Saints, but just like we talked about with Chris Olave, there is some risk that he's going to be without his starting quarterback. Not that Derek Carr is all that anymore, but still, if a backup quarterback is in there for the Saints, can you trust Shaheed?
I don't think so. I mean, like, if it's Derek Carr, I think he's one of my favorite flex options this week, without a doubt. And honestly, he's creeping towards, solid start territory. But if it's not Derek Carr, if it's one of these backups, I don't think I could put Shaheed in my lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I said I'm pretty much out on Olave if it's a backup QB. Got to be out on Shaheed. But if Carr's good to go, which, again, too early to say, yeah, I think Shaheed is still, like he always is, a very high upside flex option. All right, let's talk Dontavian Wicks. I mean, sure, it was a trap last week, but I don't think we can just abandon all hope here.
No, he still had 7 targets. He was still involved. And the good news is this week, people won't be going crazy for him. They won't be trying to start him over, way better wide receivers. But again, I think he bounces back. I think he's a solid flex this week.
I mean, look, the opportunity's still there. The talent's still there. I know it's frustrating, but you're looking for upside. Wicks does still have it. Now, it might be a fair question in Indianapolis to question who's the number 1 receiver there? Because Michael Pittman, he got you some points, but Josh Downs clearly had the lead in targets, and this is 2 weeks in a row now. Downs is getting more receptions.
Yeah, and this is going to, come down also to who's the quarterback here. Is it Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco? We're not sure yet, but I think this week I actually prefer Downs because you look at the Titans, they're very good against wide receivers, but they're not very good against slot wide receivers. I think it could be another good Downs game. I don't know if either of these guys have a big game in them. I think even Pittman is still flexible, but between the two, I prefer Downs this week.
Yeah, I mean, I was, I guess, too low on Joe Flacco, and I was really high on Joe Flacco last week. Man, he should be starting for some team somewhere, even if Anthony Richardson comes back. But anyways, I'll still be in on Pittman if Flacco starts. If Anthony Richardson's in there, he's more just kind of a floor play as a flex. But I'm more in on Downs, though. I will just say I do think this Titans defense, at least the secondary, might actually turn out to be kind of good. Now, just when Khalil Shakir was rounding out to be a really solid high floor player, strong flex, suddenly out in week 5, if he bounces back and plays in week 6, you just slot him in your flex, no questions asked.
I don't know about no question asked. This is the Jets. I mean, I think he's still in the flex conversation, but he's probably going to be towards the lower end of this tier for me.
Yeah, I think we got to take the matchup into account. It's funny because it almost looks like Josh Allen, the Bills, really missed Shakir last week. Maybe that or just a bad game. But Shakir still is going to have a floor, always has some touchdown potential here. So he's not going to be your worst option. Now, Titans were out of action last week. Will Levis, I don't know, his status is still in question for this coming week. So, right now, how do you feel about the receivers there? Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins both going against a pretty tasty matchup in the Colts.
It's a very tasty matchup, but I mean, yeah, the quarterback situation, we're looking at either Will Levis, probably Will Levis if he's healthy, or Mason Rudolph. Yeah, these guys are the definition of flex to me. Like, you put them in, you cross your fingers, and you hope it works out.
It's like I really want to be in on these receivers, but like you said, the quarterback situation is already murky. I don't want to go overboard here. I mean, right now, again, a risky flex. All right, my prediction for week 6 is the receiver we get the most questions about is Tank Dell. Again, good chance Nico Collins misses with that hamstring injury. Do we have to be in on Tank Dell?
I mean, again, I'm going to say he's like the definition of a flex start. It should be there for Tank Dell. Like, he was great last year. Where is that Tank Dell? Maybe it's the leg injury. He's still not 100%. Plus, didn't he get shot in the offseason? I feel like nobody talks about that. But, man, yeah, if Nico Collins is out, it's not the worst matchup. I'm certainly not going to say he's the best flex option, but he's far from the worst.
I mean, you feel like this should be the week that Tank Dell finally has a big game, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just not feeling it because where has that been? Why hasn't it happened so far? I mean, Nico was out a lot of last week and he still didn't really show up. So, yeah, flex is pretty much as high as I can put him. Cleveland taking on Philly, so we got Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy as flex options. Look, on paper, the Eagles defense, this should be great for Cooper and Jeudy. But on paper, Deshaun Watson still sucks. Are we going to get trapped by Cooper again?
No, because, I mean, how many weeks have they had great matchups on paper and done nothing? Again, it's like Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. They're the definition of flex starts. You know the upside is there, but you also know the risk. You put them in as a flex, yeah, and you just hope. You hope this is the week.
That's it. Look, I got suckered in by Jeudy last week. I mean, the matchup couldn't have been better, but that offense couldn't have been worse. It's not even just Watson. That offensive line is in shambles. I don't want to go on here, but I'll just say this again. You got no better choice. Go for it. Not a good matchup for Lad McConkey and the Chargers facing that Broncos secondary, although I feel like Lad isn't really going to get Pat Surtain covering him too much.
Exactly, and Lad's been sneaky good lately. But again, the Broncos secondary is not just Surtain. Like they have a lot of good players in that secondary. So again, Lad to me probably towards the lower end of the flex tier this week.
Yeah, you got to take matchup into account. Look, his last game before the bye, 5 catches, 67 yards, touchdown. Looks like he will emerge as a top target in this offense, but this isn't the week to take the risk, I don't think. On the flip side, got the Broncos' number 1 receiver, and honestly, the only one really worth considering in fantasy. It's Cortland Sutton. Despite the Broncos winning and actually scoring some points, Sutton disappointed. Does he bounce back?
Yeah, I was really disappointed with Sutton last week. I thought he'd have a nice game, in that matchup. And so Raiders didn't happen, but we know who Sutton is at this point. He's going to get all the targets pretty much, all the receptions, all the yards, all the touchdowns if there are any. So again, he's the definition of a flex.
Right. I mean, in some leagues, he might be your best option, so can't say he's someone you can't start. But again, not a great matchup against the Chargers. I'd prefer not to. And after last week, I think we got to move George Pickens down, at least to this point. Like, sure, he has flex value, but what's the feeling here on Pickens? A lot of people are ready to give up on him. And for some reason, they think that he's given up on his team.
Yeah, he's always one of those guys that, when he's struggling or not playing as many snaps, people start to wonder, right? But I still think Pickens has upside, I guess. It's not the worst matchup against the Raiders. I still think he's one of the stronger flex starts.
Look, we saw this last year. Of course, people love the drama, want to, try to make a big deal about things. He complained some last year. He's just one of these guys. Tomlin knows how to deal with players like this. So I'm not worried about Pickens, but I also understand the risks because it feels like the down games have been outweighing the big games so far this year. So it's a flex. Now, Jacoby Myers is, for now, still the number one receiver for the Raiders. Not a great matchup against that Steelers defense, but he also didn't have a great matchup last week and actually kind of came through. Is he at least a solid floor play?
He's got to be. I was very impressed last week. I was kind of off of Jacoby Myers against that Broncos defense, and he came through with a nice game. So, look, Adams isn't coming back probably ever this year to the Raiders. So, Jacoby Myers, again, has got to be one of the stronger flex options.
Yeah, the weird thing here is now I don't think we even know who the starting quarterback is for the Raiders. They're going back and forth, flip flopping. I guess it's not really a big difference, though. So, yeah, Myers doesn't have a huge ceiling, but at least he's getting that target share, so you could throw him in your lineup. On the other hand, we got a guy like Jamison Williams. Not a lot of targets, but he makes the most of them. Upside with a high ceiling.
Yeah, again, this is one of those guys always going to probably live in this range, right? The flex you put in, you know the upside is there, but you also know the risk is there. So if you're looking for that home run, he's your guy.
I feel like he could hit it. Cowboys, of course, looking better on defense, but still, this is not the same secondary from a year ago. So Jameson Williams is probably one of the stronger flex options here. Now, a lot of people are going to be running to the waiver wire to add Jalen Tolbert, Dallas receiver, actually kind of outshined CeeDee Lamb, but I think we got to temper expectations a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, we just learned our lesson with Dontavian Wicks, didn't we? But look, this is a great matchup against this Lions secondary. They're also a pass funnel defense. Very good against the run, not so good against the pass. The upside is there in this offense. He's a clear number 2. I think, once again, he's got to be one of the stronger flex options this week.
Well, I mean, I do think he is a very strong pickup. I do think he is a strong potential fourth receiver flex option. So, again, just don't get carried away. Like you said, the Wicks thing, don't force him in your lineup over any of the guys on those upper tiers that we've talked about. Now, I know with neighbors out, a lot of people expected Wan'Dale Robinson to explode. Well, he did score a touchdown along with 6 catches for 36 yards. All right. Is he startable still?
I mean, he's going to be one of these guys that lives in the flex because, yeah, he's going to get the targets. Yeah, he's going to catch passes. The yardage isn't ever going to be huge, and you really need a touchdown. More of a guy would want in a PPR league than a non-PPR league, though.
No, absolutely. Even though he did score last week, if it's a non-PPR league, maybe even half PPR, I'm probably not even going with him. But sure, he'll get you some points. Sometimes your options are limited. If you have to go and find a receiver to stream, or maybe these are just the best options on your bench, you might have to pick and play one of these receivers. So, Chris, these are our desperation plays at wide receiver for week 6. If you had your pick, who would it be?
It'll be Michael Wilson of the Cardinals. He's been fairly involved the last few weeks here, and he gets a good matchup. We talked about it, this Green Bay secondary. If Jair Alexander is back, you got to think he's probably going to spend a lot of time on Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Michael Wilson could benefit there. Doesn't have a huge ceiling here, but look, we're in desperation territory. Give me a guy in a good matchup that I know will give me some points.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the risk is high for all these players. I'm going to go back to the well. I know the Washington Commanders secondary and their whole defense has been much better the last 2 weeks, but it's just not going to shut down any opposing offense. Baltimore has now suddenly caught fire, so I'm going to take a chance finally on Rashad Bateman. He did score last week. I know that a lot of Ravens scored. Look, Bateman, this isn't the first time he's actually done something. Of course, not a super high ceiling, but I think they're going to draw a lot of attention to Zay Flowers, naturally, those tight ends, the running game, Bateman might be the beneficiary and be able to expose some of the weaker elements of that Washington secondary. So, again, if you need a guy who could score you a touchdown and get you some chunk plays, I'll go with Bateman. And sometimes the matchup is just too tough or it's just getting too deep. These are some wide receivers we just don't think you should consider at all. Now, we got you covered at running back, quarterback, tight end as well, plus trade advice, some things you need to know to win next week. All of it is in the week 6 playlist.